So we're going to start off with the basics. Every state, no matter how large or small, has 2 senators, unlike the House of Representatives, which is based on population. Now you're probably wondering, how do you become a senator? Well, in order to be a senator, you have to be at least 30 years old, have been a citizen for at least 9 years, and be a resident of the state you plan on representing. This guy over here is Chris Murphy. He's a senator from Connecticut, and he was 39 when he was elected, and is currently 41. He's serving a 6-year term, and he's basically a kid compared to all the old guys there. Now you're probably wondering, how do you get into the Senate? Well, at the beginning, when the Constitution was written, to appease the anti-federalists, the Federalists wrote in the Constitution that states can pick their own senators, so the states got to pick the 2 people they wanted to send to represent them. But they later realized that this was a bad idea because the Senate basically became a millionaires club because of all the corruption that took place between 1860 and 1920. So in 1913, Congress decided to pass the 17th Amendment and add it to the Constitution. And the 17th Amendment just states that people directly vote for their senators instead of the state appointing them. Now let's talk about who's in charge. So the Vice President is in charge of the Senate. But when he's not there, because Joe Biden is probably off doing something unimportant, the President pro tempore takes over, and it's more of a ceremonial position than something that actually matters, and it's just the oldest guy. So also, parties have a big responsibility in Congress. So the majority party has a majority leader, and the minority has a minority leader. A filibuster is basically when someone prolongs debate about a subject, and they do this in order to make everyone who's against the bill leave the building. That way, as soon as everyone who's going to vote against the bill leaves, they actually vote on the subject. So the only way to end a filibuster is by invoking cloture, which happens when 2/3 of the senators agree that they're going to vote directly on whatever the filibuster guy is talking about instead of just waiting for him to finish. Incumbency is the belief that senators that are already in office will be reelected. And it's because people already recognize their name, because voters don't really go out of their way to learn too much about anyone, so they recognize the name and they vote for them. You obviously know about the checks and balances between the 3 branches of government. But there are also checks and balances between the Senate and the House of Representatives. This happens when a bill becomes a law, because if the Senate does not like something in a bill that the House would propose, they can strike it down or amend it. Now let's talk about the big checks and balances, because those affect the Senate, because the Senate can check on the executive branch, and does this by acting as a jury in an impeachment trial, or choosing a vice president if there is no majority in the electoral system. And the Senate also has to ratify all foreign treaties, as well as approve any of the presidential appointments, including cabinet members.
Created using Powtoon.